Hey there, everyone. It's Eugene Leisha here, and welcome to episode 104 of Forensics Talk. So we're pushing the limits here in triple digits, which is fantastic. I hope you all had a wonderful summer. I had a little break, took some time off and everything else, so we're all back to it. And I am sure that many of you are feeling the September crunch. Everything is just coming to a head now, and everyone's back in full swing. So we're going to jump in here and get started on this episode. I have a few little announcements to make just beforehand. And so the first thing is, if you are watching this from abroad, please let us know in the comments section, whether you're watching this on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Just type in where you're from. I always love to see where people are watching from, whether it's around the world, locally, or whatever. And of course, the chat window is for questions or comments. So our guest today, if you have any questions for him, just put them in there. I will look through them, and I'm not sure where we will get through them all, but I'll do my best to vet them and try to give them to our guest. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to know more about these types of videos and future guests and things like that. We are going to be putting some more on here in the coming weeks, and so let me just have a quick look here. Yes, I can see people are on, which is great. So just training announcements. As I said, it's a busy time of year, so there's a lot going on. And one of them is the Recon 3D training. So I'm going to be having that next week. And in fact, let me do something here. I'm just going to share my screen. So Recon 3D is the iPhone scanning app. And so I'm having the training course next week, Wednesday, which is the 25th. And so many of you who are users, we have a very high percentage of people who are users who take the course, which is fantastic. So if you are going to be taking that, you can just head over to the Recon 3D website. You'll see the training page. Just go down there and you can get some additional information. The second thing that's going to be going on here is that we just announced a shooting incident reconstruction course, and that's going to be held in, it's hosted by San Bernardino, but I'm going to be one of the instructors along with three other very respected people. If you are interested in that particular course, it's going to be held at the Fontana Police Department in California, and I've got the link up there. If you go to the ai2-3d.com website, just do /SIR, and you will get some additional information. Okay, so that is available to you. Otherwise, there are some other things going on in terms of conferences and that sort of thing. So just a couple that I'm going to announce because there's a whole bunch going on. But one of them is going to be the upcoming International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts Conference. That's the week of October 7th. And so I will be there. I'll be doing a workshop, actually two workshops. One is going to be with a Pharaoh Zone 3D workshop. We're going to be working through some exercises with bloodstain patterns, and the other one is going to be with Hemovision. And so Hemovision is a relatively new bloodstain pattern analysis software, but we're going to walk through that workflow as well. So lots of bloodstain impacts. We're going to be making some real bloodstain impacts and going through the whole thing and walking people through the whole analysis. So that should be a bit of fun. There's also the IAFSM conference in San Diego. So that's the International Association of Forensics and Security Metrology. And that is November 3rd. So on the November 3rd date, that's the start. I think that's the beginning of the basic laser scanner certification course. So if you are interested in getting certified, the IAFSM has a course for that. And if you attend the conference that week, you can write the exam, you can attend the workshops and everything else. So basically you can get the certification that week. So that's everything there. I'm trying to remember if I said everything. The shooting incident reconstruction course, I didn't say the date, October 28th to November 1st. So I think I have all of that covered. Okay, good. Lots of waffling there, lots of stuff to talk about. But let's get into our guest here. And I just want to get a bit of background here before I bring him in. And this is David Notowitz. And he's a recognized expert in video and audio forensics with a career that blends Emmy Award-winning production skills with forensic expertise. And as the founder of the National Center for Audio and Video Forensics, the NCAVF, in Los Angeles, David leverages over 3 decades of experience in the industry. His career began in 1986 with Notowitz Productions, where he advanced the producing of daily segments for the Financial News Network, and which is now part of CNBC, so a very, very big program. David's work extends beyond production into significant contributions to forensic analysis. His expertise in forensic video and audio analysis has made him a sought-after expert witness, assisting law enforcement and legal teams across the U.S. in high-profile criminal and civil cases. His forensic endeavors have taken him into complex cases involving everything from public safety incidents to corporate litigation. David's work in the forensic field has led to groundbreaking results, including a decisive role in high-stakes cases like the Kelly Thomas trial and the analysis of controversial police actions in Minnesota and Chicago. David is an active participant in the forensics community, and he presents at seminars, and he likes to share his knowledge on significant platforms. And his commitment to advancing the practice of forensic video and audio analysis is evident through his ongoing work and his innovative approaches to complex forensic challenges. Now, I have never met David in person, but we've talked on the phone. So we've had several conversations about things like suspect height analysis and, crappy video and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm really pleased to have him here. Let me bring him in here. There he is. Hey, David, how are you?
Good, Eugene. Thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to talking to you more.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We've definitely had a lot of a few conversations, and I enjoyed very much talking with you. You have a lot of knowledge.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And likewise, I could tell that, you are also an expert in your area too. And that's why you're here. And one thing I have not talked about is, forensic audio. Video we have discussed before, and I know you're very deep into video. But, when I go to conferences and stuff like that, they touch on audio a little bit, but I really haven't seen anyone really jump in deep. I know that LEVA, the organization, has some audio work there, but we're going to get into it. We're going to dive in here in a second. But I want to start off with you because you have an interesting background, and I would say it's not unique because I know there are several people in forensics who have a more what I would call an artistic background. And so they work in film, they've worked in, producing TV shows or news and things like that. And often those people are excellent at what they do. And I think it's because of the creative process drives them to learn about the technical capabilities of certain things. So first question I ask everybody is, let's go back. And I mean, like way back, like when you were a kid. So were you like the technical nerdy kid or whatever, or were you more like?
I remember. Yeah. I remember, hooking up. There was a phone line in my bedroom, and it was just like an outlet, and it was an old form of an outlet, something run down. I didn't know what. I opened it up. It wasn't electrical, so I knew that, but I played with it, and I ended up attaching a phone to it when I was a little kid, and I was kind of impressed with myself. My parents, whatever, they seemed interested, but I think what for me was the creative side of it was more the way I came into this. I definitely always loved learning and growing and all that in my life. But when I was young, I would listen to the radio, and I listened to a show, an audio radio show, an adventure program, and it was called Mystery Theater. Now, it's not Mystery Science Theater. I think people know about that. Mystery Theater. And it was CBS. Every night, a new amazing drama just built with audio. And I absolutely loved it. I would go to sleep to it. I'd have dreams about it. I'd have nightmares about it. They'd be pretty scary sometimes. And I really dreamed about making audio like that one day.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to listen to that as well. I listened to a few episodes. I used to catch it as well. Yeah. So I know the kind of very theatrical audio that you'd get out of these shows. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it opened my imagination. I wondered about audio more in a more creative way. And so I think I came to audio forensics through all that creative process, which we can talk about more as I grew older.
Yeah, and so you let's talk about like when you actually started getting it. So did you decide to go to school to learn like production and all that other film production and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I decided to go to University of California, Santa Cruz, and do audio and video production there and theater, because they didn't have a film major there, but they had audio and video production, they called it, and it wasn't an actual major yet. So you had to major in theatrical drama, that kind of thing. So I did that, but you didn't have to take that many classes in that. So I really enjoyed the film production, the hands-on with the equipment. I got involved with the film department very early and kind of pushed my way into getting my hands on the equipment, which they were trying to keep freshmen out of that kind of stuff. Like you had to do theory and all that. And I enjoyed seeing films. I enjoyed seeing, these bizarre films that they showed in college I'd never heard of or saw. I knew all the normal films like E.T. and, Star Wars and all these films that came out, but they started showing films I couldn't believe. They broke the rules of filmmaking. And so it got me really intrigued with the creativity and the process of editing, which I loved the editing. So in school, I was really highly focused on editing, on playing with sound in a dark room late at night. I was the only one there, and I was just playing with equipment. Loved it.
We get, sometimes there's people here who are watching because they're students and they're looking for new areas of study and things like that. So what was your first, what was the, sort of thing that sort of flipped you into the whole forensics thing? Was it a gradual thing? Was it just you had an idea one day, or did somebody approach you maybe? I don't know. But how did that happen?
Yeah, I didn't know this kind of field existed. And I was working for a long time in film and video and TV and news production. And so to give you the time frame, at least, I graduated in 89 from school. In 2001, a friend of mine who was an attorney asked me if I can help him with a case. So I'm jumping ahead in time a lot, but that's fine. And I said, well, I've never worked on a court case before. And he said, well, we have this situation. And I was very nervous because after helping him on the case, it's a video forensics case. We'll get to the audio in a minute, but my first case was video. When I helped him, I had to testify. I was very nervous. I'd never been in front of a court, in front of a judge, except for like parking tickets, speeding tickets. I had a few of those, but very nervous. And the judge asked me, how do we know you didn't manipulate the evidence to help your client? Because we don't really understand what you're doing, and you could fake it and trick us, and we'd never know. That's the underlying thing. He didn't say all those words, and I said, because I don't lie. And that was the answer. I didn't know what else to say. I did the work. I didn't lie. I didn't make it up. And back in the hallways of the courthouse, my friend, who was the attorney, gave me a high five and just said, that was the perfect answer. You gave the exact answer that you should have given. And thank God we successfully, and as it should have, won the case with the judge, understanding the evidence through me.
Yes. Yeah, excellent.
And so he didn't call me for another 5 days. Sorry, not 5 days.
Yeah, sorry.
5 years or so when he worked on the second case. I just kept doing my other stuff, whether production, news, television, whatever. But this case was much more high profile, and it involved audio as well. And so I had to learn how to edit audio in a way that was different, because with television production, film, you don't really care if you make up audio or create new frames of audio, fix things, cut and paste audio from another piece in the whole documentary that you're working on, let's say. It's fine. But obviously with forensics, you cannot do any of that. You can't create any evidence. You can only reveal evidence. That's the job of a forensic expert. It's very different. Forensic audio, you're not fixing audio to repair things. You're revealing what's there and just uncovering it as best as possible. So he called me. I worked on it. I learned very quickly that, man, this is exciting. This is a huge case. It was national profile, news vans hanging out outside every day. We walked to court. After I did all the work, I also worked in court with him for a month or so. Can't remember exactly how long, but a long time in court, helping with presenting the evidence to the jury and preparing it and working with transcripts and transcriptions of the court activities every day. We went over stuff, and it was really exciting. And so I realized I wanted to push forward in this now as a profession and maybe move a little bit away from doing the other work.
Yeah, it's interesting how it sometimes comes, sometimes it comes to you, sometimes you go to it, right? So, but that's pretty neat. You had somebody that was already there. When you already started off on your own. So you started, it was Notowitz Productions, right? It was
Right.
yeah. Okay. So that was your first business.
Yeah.
Did you immediately just, jump into video? Were you doing other things? Were you, and where did audio first really start for you?
So my first job a couple of weeks after coming to LA was with Financial News Network, and I started producing for them, really associate producing for an anchor. Every day he'd have a 3-minute segment that was needed to go on the air. So my job was to research, find stories, shoot it if necessary, record, do everything. And then he would go on the air and read my script and then play the video that I had for that segment. You had to have very careful control over the quality. The video and the audio had to be satellite ready, had to be engineering perfect. Everything had to be the right waveform, the right volumes and everything. So that was my first foray into actually getting paid to do work, which was amazing every day, like full-time work. Friends of mine were doing films on the side, and so I helped them with that. My first audio stuff was really editing dialogue, editing music, layering sounds and things for my friends' films. And that was not paid so much.
I can imagine.
But I also continued doing documentaries and do other things. And I did some, after about 1.5 years, I left Financial News Network because they moved to CNBC's headquarters in, I think it was New Jersey. I wasn't going to leave LA at the time. No way. They offered me to leave and work, but I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But I kept working on my own in the first years and going on. I continued building people's knowledge of me. I started working on documentaries, helping people, getting paid for it, actually, segments, other things for businesses, doing commercials. All this stuff has audio, and you have to mix audio with the soundtracks that you have. You have to layer things, and I just loved it. The biggest audio project that was in Hollywood style, documentary production, was I had a feature-length documentary that I edited. And at the end of that process, I realized we needed to create a soundtrack for it. And in the place that I was working, they had this 8-track mag tape. It was, like tape, like this thick, and it had 8 tracks on it. One of the tracks is reserved for the time code that you had to have. And the 7th track had to be left by itself empty because the 8-track time code would bleed into the 7th track if you used it. So I had 6 tracks to work with, and I did stereo music soundtrack. I did special effects. We did back and forth dialogue in the documentary, narration track, a lot of fun things. And I had to layer that all down linearly. And it wasn't with, there wasn't such thing as Avid or that kind of stuff. It had to be done manually. And I had to mix it in the end. So I had tons of notes and I had to mix it live. If I messed up on the mix, I'd have to jump in and find a point where I could click in and start the mix again. So it was a really good experience. That 8-track sunk to the video that I had created, but it would take about 10 seconds to come up to speed. When you started play, it wouldn't like immediately be in sync. It would be, everything would be coming to gears and then kind of adjust itself and finally get in the sync. And then I could start mixing the sound from that point. It was a good learning experience. And that's why I think a lot of people, like you talked about, the creative world, they have to know this stuff inside and out. They have to know the technology, audio, video, because they've made a lot of mistakes. At least I have made lots of mistakes, and you learn how to do it right as well. So that technology from the ground up is very helpful. When you get police officers, who are working in the police department, who become forensic experts, they don't come with the same experience. They have to learn from going to classes more and learn from the organizations that teach them. Whereas on my end, I haven't taken as many classes and got as much official licenses to work as an expert because I come from this background.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And well, everybody has their perspective. They come at it with like different things. So for example, my background is in engineering, but I'm not, I didn't study forensics in university. I studied engineering. And so there's, different things. But you brought up a couple of things like the software. And I wanted to ask you about that because obviously with the digital era and then everything switching over, I'm curious about the transition of the tools that you have in your arsenal. And we're talking, I think, in general now with video and audio. But what did you have before? Like these first cases that you did, what were you working with versus how's that transitioned over time?
Yeah. So at first, when we're working with my earliest cases in terms of audio, my memory is that there were some really nice filters that were built into the editing system that we used. I know I did maybe a little bit in the very beginning. There was programs like, I'm trying to remember the names of the programs, but are still very popular today, but I don't use them. And, it's slipping my mind. But at first, what is the program that Apple uses right now for their editing software, for example?
Oh, it's not iMovie or whatever.
Final Cut. That's
Final
it.
Cut.
Gotcha. Final Cut Pro. So before that, there was something called Pro Tools, which still exists, and it was bought by Avid. But before that, it was an independent more. And I did a little bit with Pro Tools. It was very complicated because you had a lot of hardware. And it was very expensive. There was Avid that was around.
Isn't Pro Tools what people like use for putting together songs, like writing? Yes. Musicians? Okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Pro Tools is a professional creation tool for music and all this stuff, and it was around a long time ago. I enjoyed using it at the beginning, but it was very expensive, and I was young, and I didn't want to pay for it. I'd borrow it from friends or I volunteered in studios in order to, like I would digitize stuff for them in order to have access to all their high-end products. Like Avid was very expensive, Avid editing system, but they had filters that were built in, so you can use the filters to do audio work. And so I did a lot of audio trying to clean up, doing that kind of work with Avid. Like I said, Final Cut Pro was something that Apple came out with, which I loved, but then they came out with a new version that totally messed up forensic work on it. And I was very disappointed. So I went over to Adobe Premiere after that. There's a lot of tools that are used by the film industry that I can use because they come with filters that are very forensically usable. You can use for forensics. But so there's a lot of transitions there. But my favorite tool now, I used it since version 2, and now we're in version 11, is Isotope RX. It's an audio software that is used by Pro Tools, is included as filters, but I like the standalone product because of its amazing abilities for forensics.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm a Premiere user myself, and I've noticed even recently they've added a lot of other tools and little enhancements and such. I want to ask you about some of the difficulty of working with audio and what people are asking of you. So, when somebody comes to you with a case, and I'm going to guess that the majority of what you're getting is video, but because I don't know, maybe there's some audio in the background, and the big one is enhance or whatever. But I'm curious about the kinds of things that you can do with audio and the kinds of things that people come to you and ask of you to do with audio.
So we get, like you said, a lot of video evidence in, but we also get audio sometimes. So we'll get video, for example, that's, let's say, body camera footage from a police officer, and the officer's voice is very loud because it's close up, but this person that you want to hear might be far away. And so the simple things like leveling sound, just taking the softer voices and making them louder, is one thing we do quite often with all kinds of audio. We also get 911 calls where there's noise. We get surveillance video from stores where there's audio there. And a lot of times our clients don't really think about enhancing the audio. They don't really realize that it can be done, or it doesn't dawn on them. They're bringing it to us for the video. They want to help them analyze it and understand what it is without realizing that there's a whole level of audio. We've gotten fascinating things from buses, for example. I'll just give one that comes to mind, where buses can have 8, 12 cameras on the single bus, and it's given to our clients as one file. It might be a proprietary system. Proprietary meaning not easily played back except within their own software system that's pre-built. And our client doesn't even know that the audio can be enhanced, doesn't think about it. But more than that, there might be more than one mic on that bus. A lot of people don't even realize that. And a lot of people never even realized it. And, they might have worked on it as video, but when we have converted the files, we often use something called FFmpeg. Do you ever use that?
Yeah, I know what it is. I'm not a big user of it. I use some of the, it's built into a lot of the video analysis programs. So yeah.
Correct. It is built in, but we kind of use it on its own. You can script it and do things. So once you extract the audio from it, let's say, you realize, wait a minute, there's 2 channels here. Let's say there's a mic at the front of the bus and a mic in the middle of the bus, or a mic outside and a mic inside. There's different possibilities, but you can literally improve the audio astoundingly by just separating the channels and playing one instead of the other. And I've had cases go really close to trial, and then they come and call me, and I say, do you realize you have 2 separate audio channels here, and one of them is really clean? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, now you can, it doesn't even, like, simple things like that where they don't even know what they have in their hands.
Yeah, that could be super useful for sure.
So an amazing amount of work. So let's say you asked about what kind of audio do we face, and I'm going to give you like one other example that relates to my first thing I brought up, which was audio from a police, let's say, camera, where there's the sound of a siren, alarms that come in, police cars coming. Sirens are very defined. So I'm going to use my finger here. It goes, so you can visualize that a little bit with my finger, the sounds going up in frequency, coming down in frequency. I'm trying to make I'm not doing it so on the camera.
I get it.
You can imagine it, of course. It's very defined, and you can, with an amazing ability in isotope, just like you can do, how you can do lasso tool in Photoshop, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can circle things and you can erase things in Photoshop. Very specific. Well, in isotope, you can see that siren. You can see that alarm. Another thing that happens is beeps that happen. They go beep, beep, on walkie-talkies and things.
Mm-hmm.
It can cover up maybe an important moment of dialogue. So I'm gonna take a sip of water. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's interesting. So you're actually highlighting a few things I was going to ask you about, which were the kinds of things that you can do with audio today. So you're obviously saying about separating channels. You're talking and enhancing. You're talking about So is it easy to remove like the beeps and things that are overlapping on each other?
So with the right tool and knowing what you're doing, yeah, it's really fun to do. You can actually see the beeps frequency wise on the screen. You have different ways of looking at audio. You can look at it volume, how loud something is. You can look at it frequency, what the level of frequency is, which is bass or treble. And you can literally circle a sound and delete it. Now you have to be really careful, and you have to tell people what you do, but you have the original audio, which of course the other side can always have and use. But now you have a new version of the audio, which is the audio where we removed sirens, removed beeps. We've removed bird chirps when it's outside, let's say on surveillance. You have Nest cameras and you have bird chirps it's very defined often with birds, tweet, tweet, tweet. It's not, it's above the voice often, above a voice. above most of a voice signal.
So being able to isolate those frequencies and identifying where they fall, and then you can separate those out.
You just delete it, and it literally leaves a hole in your frequency in that one moment. So you can show that to a jury. You can show what you did. You can show the before and after. With isotope, it's really nice because it gives you a whole history of what you did, every step of what you did. So I love being able to demonstrate this, because often the other side will say, like, how do you know they didn't do something, that, or how can you trust what you're hearing? And I like to say, okay, jury, well, let me show you. I'll show you exactly what we did. Here's the beginning of the work. Here's the middle, and here's the end. Here's where it was before we did any work. Here's when we removed the sirens. Here were we, and I can talk about it more, boosted certain voices or took out noise, other noise, forms of noise, which I love to talk to you about. And here's the final result. Let's play it back in court over and over again, several times. See if you hear what I hear. This is what I hear. This is the sentence I hear. Do you hear it too? So it's fun to do. I enjoy it a lot.
That's interesting. So that's a really important point. I think that might be another thing that I would have said, is trying to identify what somebody had actually spoken, what words were actually spoken. And then I'm also thinking about, are you ever asked to, looking at the frequency spectrum or whatever, asked to make maybe something like an identification, either to know, is it this person or something else? Or what if it's not a person? What if it's a sound coming from something else? Like, is anyone ever asked you, well, a gunshot or something else like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. We've been asked by police doing investigations to confirm that, let's say, what we're hearing is a gunshot versus someone yelling. And at first it sounds obvious, like a yell versus a gunshot, but it really depends on the environment that this has been recorded in. That might affect how I can do that determination. But they were concerned that a police officer's yell was actually a gunshot. Like they were concerned, they want to make sure they can support that what we're hearing on the recording and seeing in the video is just an officer making a statement rather than shooting off his weapon. And so we've analyzed the audio for those by comparing other examples of the officer yelling in the same video. So in the same environment. So we compare those and we say, look, here he's yelling and here he's yelling, and you can see the difference because of this. And then here's gunfire on the block at the same time. And here's the difference, the difference in, of course, of echo, the difference in the volume, the difference in how it affected the camera's overmodulation, that kind of thing. So yeah. We've definitely done that, where we're trying to identify voices versus other things. We're asked to compare voices to each other. Is this the same person? Is this a different person? We're asked to do anything. When anything comes up with audio or video, we try to help the client as best we can. If we can't do it, we'll tell them. But we try to be a kind of I don't know if you say a gatekeeper of forensics in this one area. So when clients, we try to see the big picture for the client and try to give them all the possibilities of what could be done with their evidence, because they come to us not really knowing what to do with it. They come to us, here's our video, and it's the best way I like to work with people when they really don't know. Here's our video evidence. We're defending this person. What can you tell us about it? What can you help us with? And we start with, is this an original piece of evidence? Is this original recording, or is it degenerated because it's been texted to someone, emailed to someone, uploaded to Facebook, downloaded from Instagram, whatever? So, sometimes we get these files and we're like, well, where's the original? And we've gone so far as to track down a user as best as possible, contact that person who uploaded it, try to figure out where the original is, go to their home. We've done this, gone to their home, help, because they're friendly, not an unfriendly witness or something, but a friendly person in that case, or maybe not friendly or unfriendly, but at least not upset at us. Like they're willing to cooperate.
Sure.
It's someone who's willing to cooperate. Gone to their home, gone to their hard drive, and found the original recording on their computer hard drive. Because the quality can go down. You can lose a great deal when you don't have the original. So there's a lot of areas that we work in. We try to help as much as possible. I'm jumping around a lot, but it's fun.
It's okay. I am too. So as you're speaking, I'm coming, and I have a list of questions I'm going to ask you, but there's a bunch of stuff you're prompting me to ask you anyway. So one thing that crossed through my mind as you were speaking had to do with the fact that technology has changed over the years.
Yep.
Is it easier now, or are the problems different than they used to be? So, quality of recordings better now, or is it more complicated because of the way that these things are encoded or something? Like, what can you tell me about some of the challenges that you have when you're analyzing audio?
Okay, so the biggest challenge I would say is when you don't have the original, because it's been uploaded to, Twitter, X now, x.com, and someone captured it off their computer with just a computer capture software, and you have no way of knowing where it came from. There's no chain of evidence. And so that becomes, well, nowadays, in the last 6 months, you can fake audio really well now. I mean, it's incredible what you can do with AI related stuff. So that's a big problem. You said, is it easier or harder? It's different because, the software is fantastic for enhancing audio now. It's much better than it was. When I did my first audio case, was 2006. It's the high profile case, and I could do some work, taking out noise, doing work, trying to bring up the volume, boosting volume of certain aspects of the evidence. But now you can, on the screen, identify a noise print. So you identify a section of the audio that you considered noise. Basically, what's noise? It's just anything you don't want, right? Anything you don't want in the recording, that's what noise is. So let's say you identify noise. You can tell the computer now, this is noise. I want you to remove this from the entire recording. So as long as the noise doesn't change, which it sometimes does over time, like the environmental noise can change, but for the point of time which it doesn't change, you can tell the computer remove that noise from throughout this noise print. And it's a software thing, and I love doing that. There's different levels of removal and different settings and all that, but that's a thing that wasn't around in 2007 when I worked on that first case. Or at least I didn't know about it back then. So maybe it existed. No, it probably existed, but in a very expensive way in some form. Now it's in software built in to Isotope, and I love working with it. But that's the fun stuff. But the less fun stuff is when you get footage, audio recordings, and you don't know the source of it, and they want us to authenticate it, and sometimes we can't. We have to try and see what we can do. We look at the metadata, try to analyze the file. We look at the file name even. We try to figure out with the attorney, try to go back. Where'd this come from? Tell me, if it's a DA, a prosecutor, tell me where it came from. If it's a defense attorney, a criminal defense or civil case, where did this come from? What's the chain of evidence? And if we can go back a little bit, that's great. Even a little bit farther back to figure out where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go on to discuss a little bit on something, which is when you get a file format and hopefully they tell you what was used to record this evidence, right? It's evidence, so you got to know where it came from. So then one technique is to buy that exact device and do some tests with it. So buy that exact recorder. The police might be using something from 15 years ago, and it's like this because it's all they got in their warehouse to use. And that's what they send out with their police officers to make recordings on. Or it might be the police officer's iPhone. He might just use it his own device and do a voice memo. But they usually can tell you, or they hope to tell you, where they made this recording. And So if you can get the same device and do tests with it and to see what is the output, what does it look like? Is it the same codec? That kind of thing. So if you can do tests and you can compare it to the evidence that they give you, that could be helpful.
So I have a question. So for example, when you have video, sometimes it's easy to tell that something has been converted, but with audio, is it on par with video sometimes, like an original source where you get a lot of information, sometimes in the metadata, in the header information and stuff like that? Is audio the same, or is there much more limited information sometimes? If somebody writes an MP4 file, and then they convert it to something else, are they stripping out everything and you're like, hey, something is weird here? Or does it still copy everything over and you're like, well, I don't know if this was the original?
There's some, it depends. This is an it depends question. There's so much, every situation is different, but sometimes there's metadata left. Sometimes there's even the names of editing programs that were used, or a download program is embedded in the audio file. So like it came from this online editing software. We've had that where people just don't know what they're giving us. Might be revealing more than they want us to know, or might be revealing exactly what they want us to know. But there's a lot of variety of what we get. Like I said before, we'll get audio embedded in video. So we'll be able to look at the video forensics as well, the video metadata, as well as the audio. But sometimes you get an audio file and it's completely blank. Like there's nothing there. So we have to go back to the client and say, there's no information here except for the codec that was used, the MP3 or whatever codec. And we need more information. I mean, we can't necessarily trust this audio without testimony from who got it from where.
Yeah. I want to move on to some cases, and I like asking this question now, and that is, for you personally, like some of the cases you've worked on, which are some of the memorable ones, that you've worked on in terms of audio? And like, did you ever have like one of those moments where it's like, holy mackerel, like I can't believe we did this. Like this worked out really, really well. And can you talk about, and I don't need the case details, but just some of the technical parts anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about cases as long as I can do it without giving away information. A case we're working on right now involves gunshots that were recorded by a citywide surveillance network. And the like, gunshots...
Sure Shot or whatever it's called, or ShotSpotter?
ShotSpotter is one of them, yeah. So these weren't meant to do recordings that were used for analysis, but they asked us if we could figure out who shot first in a certain case. Because they know that these two types of bullet casings were found, and there are two different kinds of guns. These two bullet casings cannot be from the same gun. They're two different kinds of guns. So of these two guns that were used, which one fired first? That's all they need to know. And so it's very complicated. I don't know if we're going to come up with an answer, but it's fascinating. We went to a gun range. We've done a lot of tests at the gun range using the same exact mic that was used in the device that these devices use in the cities. So I found the device. They wouldn't give me the actual device, but they gave me the specifications. We literally engineered a new microphone using the same, I should say, we engineered a new device using the same exact microphone. I bought a bunch of them. We played with it. I had to have an engineer help me build it. And then we did tests on the gun range at the same exact distances that those mics were in the city from the incident. So we're doing a lot of recreation there, and we're having a lot of fun with it. I honestly don't know if we're going to come up with a real answer or not. I hope so, but it's a fascinating exercise for us, and I hope we can come up with an answer, because that's the goal. Another thing,
I hope you turn it into a paper and publish it if it's worthy. I mean, it sounds like a validation type of test. So I hope you do something with it. Yeah,
I've been keeping careful track of that because I've never done a paper before. Never created a paper, as they say, and I've been to a lot of conferences and everyone talks about doing their papers, and I go to them and I listen to the papers. I think this is one that will be a paper.
Nice.
Nice. But another one that's really fun that we did work on, and it's done and was released, is that a client called us because he said his voice was being cloned and faked. And someone had put it online, and he said he never made this call. He never did it. So, I'm like, well, I can't verify or not verify this recording because it's on the internet and it's just, there's no tracking of where it came from. And nowadays it's so easy to fake a voice. And he said, oh, really? I said, yeah, because he suspected it's fake. He didn't know how that could be done. But so I worked with him to clone his voice and create a conversation that fooled his mom and his girlfriend. They thought it was his voice. So I had a lot of fun going back to my first stuff I talked to you about, which is, mystery theater and creating radio programs. So I created a phone conversation between an AI voice, which is totally faked, and his voice, which I cloned, also fake, but I used his voice. And I created a whole 2-minute piece, which was a lot of fun. He used it for PR purposes, to show that all this stuff online could have been easily faked. He says he didn't do it. He released a whole press release, with my recording to show his clients and the people that he hires that it could have been easily faked.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. So it's not a court case, but it's very related to doing audio forensics and AI and all the new cloning that can be done.
Well, let me ask you about AI. I mean, I don't know if you've seen these, but I get these ads now and it's got Joe Rogan's voice. And I don't think Joe Rogan is selling a lighter or something like that. It sounds really weird, but I saw something the other day, I thought, and it made me think of you right away. It was more for music, like people that want to learn like a piece of music or something. And you can isolate like a guitar and just the guitar or just a one instrument. And I guess it relates back to maybe some of what you're talking about, but I'm not sure if the AI is maybe filling in some of the gaps, or anything like that. So
right.
Let me ask you about the AI tools, both the dangers and the benefits.
Sure. I'm going to start with video because you'll relate to this, I think, and it's interesting for everyone. We had a case where a client called us with the original video, and also the other side, I can't give too many details, but I'm thinking as I'm doing this, the other side had removed fog from the image. Okay, something like fog. I won't go into detail, but like fog from the image. And they used an AI tool to do this. Now, for me, so far in my life, in my work with NCAVF and with all our forensics work, there's no tool to do that that's forensically sound. Okay. Yes, you can, because we don't really know how it works. You know what I'm saying? Like to remove fog and to leave evidence on the screen, right? This is what we see now without all this distracting fog. Well, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what it's creating out of nothing. I don't know what's filling in the gaps. This is not a forensic tool. It's just a simple online thing that removes fog. Well, it could easily be creating evidence that I don't know about. I'm sure it is, in fact. It looked like it was. So that's very dangerous. And I don't know if it's dangerous, but hopefully it would never be allowed in court to do that. And I said, well, we can't do that. I can't trust it. Same thing with audio. AI tools are wonderful and amazing. I love it. I love playing with AI. Going into Chat GPT, and there's something called Midjourney, which is incredible. I love playing with this stuff, but it's not forensically sound yet. It's not forensically sound at all. It's creating stuff out of nothing. But the tools that work with audio, the AI tools, you have to be really careful. So for example, the software I love most right now, which I've used since version 2, and now it's, like I said, it's version 11, is Isotope RX. RX. It's now, I use 10, 11. There's a few tools in there, a few filters that are creating evidence. There are a few tools that spectrally repair, the sound, and we can't use those. So you have to be really careful. We can only use tools with the audio forensics that remove noise, remove things, just leaving the original sound that we want. It's very important not to create evidence that doesn't exist. Even if you think you're just doing a little bitty thing, you might be changing how someone might perceive a certain word, which would be a bad thing to do when you're trying to make a transcript. We do a lot of work with transcripts. People call us, what do you hear? So we don't want to create evidence out of nothing. We want to take the evidence that there is, clarify it as much as possible, and then make transcripts from it, let's say, in certain situations. When you have a court reporter who makes a transcript, let's say in a courtroom, or with evidence, they're given evidence and let's say someone on the other side or one of our clients gives it to a court reporter. They listen to it once or twice as they're typing it up. They're not listening to it 100 times or 200 times to try to figure out what is being said. They definitely don't do any forensic work on it themselves. So we're given audio and asked to do forensic work where they're telling us we need to create a minute-long transcript or an hour-long transcript. We might listen to it 100 times in creating that transcript.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll notice a lot of little things. And I know that with some of the work that I've done, one word can easily sound like something else, and you get tricked. And it's like what people talk about the music, right? When you think, you never knew the singer, that's what he was actually saying. You thought he was saying something else, and you're singing it the wrong way for 10 years. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.
For sure, and the context is really important. You have, let's say something takes place in a factory. You're trying to understand what's being said, but you don't know all the terms of art, as they call it. You don't know those details of the machinery that they call out, they're talking about. So that stuff, or in a medical situation with police, we don't know what device is being used. When the ambulance shows up and they're talking about a certain medicine, those kind of things, we get these words and we don't know what's being said. So at first we have to say, unintelligible, or at least unknown what's being said. Someone who's an expert will be able to figure it out. We might not. In terms of music, with removing, let's say, choosing a guitar riff or something, I don't know how that works. Honestly, I don't work with music, so I'm a little bit lost in that area. But I do know how to deal with, let's say you have a really bassy sound that's in the way. I know how to take out the bass or remove the maybe there's it's a really overmodulated sound, which means just way too loud. So I've learned to just a crazy technique just to cut off the top of the sound, the highest frequency, and delete it. Some of that overmodulation goes away, some of it. And yes, it's not good for movies. It's not good for a music recording. But if you're trying to figure out what they are saying for court purposes, you might have a really bad quality sound, but at least now you can tell what they're saying.
Interesting. And I want to ask you about trial, because you talked about going to court and explaining things to juries and stuff like that. So
sure.
I want to ask you about pitfalls in audio analysis. And you've been around for a while, so you've probably seen some things where people, maybe on the other side of what you're working, or maybe on the same side even, where they try to bring something in as evidence and you're like, whoa, what the heck is this? Can you just maybe share like what some of the problems or pitfalls or areas you have to be really careful about might be?
Sure. First of all, you want to have a good chain of evidence of all the work you did, the software you used, the different steps done. because if they try to challenge you on that, you want to be able to support yourself fully. And you want to use a software that's trusted, not something just you ended up finding online for free that you don't know anything about. So that's one thing, is be able to take on challenges from the other side. The other thing is that people will claim certain things are being said in a recording. I see it all the time from the other side, let's say, and I say, either maybe I don't hear it at all. I don't, it could, and I try to give examples. I say it's one of three possibilities. Like it could be what you said, but I don't hear it really. I hear possibly this, I hear this, I hear this, I hear this. To put it out there that it's not just this one phrase. It could be another phrase. Another thing that I hear is just attorneys just literally, they will make up things, literally make up things. And so we have to be able to combat that as well by saying, this is what I hear, and let me play it for you, and you'll hear it too. Because they're trying to pull something over your head here, and it can be really frustrating to me. There's a lot of money involved in certain cases. There's a great deal of money, and I'm not going to wreck my reputation for one case just to make a lot of money. Okay. But I've seen experts on the other side, and it's really disturbing to me, making up things just because they're paid a lot of money. Honestly, it might have been their last case before they retired. And I've seen that. I've seen experts get, and I'm going to name a number, $250,000. $250,000 to say something on a case that wasn't true. They retired after that. Like they knew they weren't going to be, like they had trouble because I was against them. Like I wasn't going to let them get away with it. But I've also been literally threatened that I shouldn't testify the way I was, or I shouldn't work on a case because I would never work for this other client again if I did.
Really?
Yeah. And it was true. They never hired me again. This other client didn't hire me again and so it was like a three-pronged connection that I just want to bring clarity to evidence. That's what I want to do. I want to bring clarity to a case. I want my clients to have an honest trial, but that's not what some people want.
Yeah.
It's very disturbing to me, and we've lost business, a good amount of business because of it.
Interesting. Wow. I want to ask you, we're getting on in time here. See, I said, we're going to try for an hour, and an hour just flew by, and I got a few more questions. So one is, let's talk about NCAVF. I want to talk about what you guys are doing. Can you tell me about your team? Tell me about your capabilities, and I'm going to bring it up here while you're doing that.
My team, my capabilities in general. So we do audio and video forensics and cell phone forensics as well. So I know very little about cell phone forensics, but my team does. We use Celebrite for talk about specifics to extract, recover, analyze cell phone evidence, which is a really interesting part of our business. And I enjoyed growing in that area in the last several years. We do, separate from cell phone then, we do audio and video forensics, anything to do with audio and video. So I've talked about audio a lot, but I'll talk about video for just a moment in terms of determining height seen of someone, like you do a lot, in a video, determining the speed of a car, determining how far apart objects are in a video, determining a lot of measurements in video that are possible. So we also do a really interesting thing we do a lot of, which is synchronizing evidence. So because so much evidence is out there now, so many recordings are done all the time, you might get more than one piece of evidence. There might be a surveillance camera, like a Nest or Ring camera, or a surveillance camera in a 7-Eleven, these kind of things. 7-Eleven, evidence in a market of some kind, or a supermarket or a clothing market or anything. So you might get all this evidence, but you might also get a phone call, 911 call. You might get body camera from a police officer, and all this footage has to be synchronized. It doesn't have to be, but it should be. It can be. So we synchronize this footage together to create a single timeline. And it allows you to analyze the video using the audio, allows you to analyze the audio using the video. And we have a lot of fun with all those synchronizations. So we do a lot of that too. So much stuff. But anytime there's video, audio, or cell phone evidence, clients call us.
What about training?
Do we do training?
Yeah, I mean, training for either lawyers or training for educating people in different areas, maybe.
So I love teaching, as I'm doing now on this show. I love talking at conferences. I just enjoy the process. I share a lot of cases with attorneys. I meet with public defender attorneys online and also in person to show them cases that we worked with. So we say, okay, this is how the evidence showed up, was brought to us. And this is what we did with it. These are the steps we did. And this is how we helped the case. We get sometimes super high resolution now can be recorded in a parking lot. It just came to mind now, something very interesting. So we had a very high, 4K surveillance video in a parking lot. And our attorney called us, can you help me zoom into this section of the video? And they had the original footage. So, 4K is very high resolution. We zoomed into a very small corner of the screen and proved that his client, our client, the attorney's client, did not start the fight. The other guy did. And we proved it, showing movement, showing hand gestures. We got the case dismissed. And it's fascinating because the attorney didn't even know what they had in their hands, but they came to us. We zoomed in on it. We proved their case. So that kind of thing is a lot of fun.
Nice. I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I'm just going to post a couple here. So this is from Topher Farrell. He says, I've been an audio engineer since 2001, working in audio post for film as well as music production. I'm fascinated by audio forensics and would love to transition to that field. How do I get started? And this is a great question because, again, students, academics, whatever, they want to get into this. Tell me, what do you think?
Okay, so the way I came into this was totally by an accident, right? As I told you, my friend, who I was the best man at his wedding, an attorney, asked me to help him with the first case I ever worked on. And then he came back to me several years later, 5 years later, and said, can you help me with this new case? That's how I got into it. And then it was high profile. And so his attorney friends started asking about it and it got in the news. And I just started focusing on that as a business. It took me 3 years to transition after that case, 3 years from all doing production to doing forensics. So it was a very slow process. So I created a new website. I reached out to attorneys. I started doing the work, but I kept doing the old job. And I just had 2 separate websites, 2 separate businesses. I had Notowitz Productions and NCAVF, where I slowly reduced one and raised the other until I could make a living. As a one-man band for a while, I could talk a lot about running your own business, which we won't talk about now, but I have a lot of employees now. But how to do it yourself, I hate to say it, but you can call me and maybe I can use you. I can help you. I would love to talk to you further. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And maybe you can help me with a couple cases. But I think reaching out to attorneys, going to association meetings, bar association meetings, talking about what you do, volunteering your time like that is the best way to transition. But you have to be patient because it's a very niche business that I'm talking about. It's extremely niche.
Yeah. Are there places that you would recommend for example, like picking up some training courses, either longer courses or short courses or something like that?
So I love LEVA, LEVA. They're a really good organization. There's the National Center for Media Forensics. It's out of Denver, Colorado. I like those guys. Very nice people. And they know what they're talking about. I learned on the job honestly. I learned by just working on cases over many, many years, doing the work. But those are guys that can train you in forensics. They're not going to guarantee you a job, but they will help you with connections to the government, because honestly, my company's private. My company's a private company, and I'm not a professor. I don't teach in schools yet. I'm happy to do so, but I've never done that. I think it'd be fun to do. But I think if you become you go to these classes, you get trained in that way, they can help you reach out to government jobs. And you can work for FBI, Secret Service. There's a lot of people who do that. Target has a major, because Target's a big organization. They have their own forensic lab, actually. So it's a lot of good. There's a lot of good opportunities once you get trained well. I don't have any of those like licenses or graduation degrees or anything. I never needed it. A fascinating thing. You're in court. How are you allowed to testify about evidence? How are you allowed to say, to talk about an audio evidence or video evidence? The only thing you need is a judge who's in charge of that courtroom to say you're allowed to testify. That's all you really need, the bottom line. You don't need any degrees or licenses or anything. Now, how do they give you that approval? The judge has to be convinced that you are an expert that knows a little bit more than the jury members do. You don't have to know a lot more than the jury members do. You have to know a little bit more. If you know a little bit more, the judge might allow you to testify. I've never been not allowed to testify, but once you learn enough, the attorney on the other side might try to challenge you and say, look, he has no licenses, no degrees, he's not an expert. Well, then your attorney will ask you questions. Where did you learn what you do? And you say, I got this from Denver. I took this class. I went to this conference. A judge has to decide then if he's going to allow you to testify or not.
Yeah, usually after this many years, this many cases, they roll through all your CVs and all that sort of thing, and then they just go, yeah, okay, let's get him on and let's move on.
They try to, though, find a very specific thing. But what they do with me now is they try to find a very specific thing. Have you ever testified about an orange man in Chicago in a bar? No, I guess I haven't. That's true.
Yeah, I get it. Let me bring up the.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, got another question for you here.
Yeah.
It's from Henry Vega. He says, David, have you ever determined the sequence of shooting events using audio? And you kind of said something that you're working on, but I'm just wondering if you've done anything like that before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into all the details, but a lot of times we have got a lot of cases with shootings in them, and you have to figure out the order of events. And you use visual cues, sometimes with video, you use audio cues. You can use 911 calls that maybe were recorded separately to do that. So there's a lot of, it's a kind of a wide question you asked. It's a broad question, but yes, we've figured out the order of events based on audio cues, gunshots, and visual cues.
So I know we're getting on time here, so I do have another question for you, and that is just the future. You've got a company now, you've had a ton of cases and everything else. You're working on some cool stuff now with new cases. What's next for you? Like, are there things that you would like to do in the future? Things you'd like to get into? New technologies you'd like to try? What's on your mind right now?
Well, the funnest future thing that's happening right now in forensics for me is all the laser scanning, 3D modeling, animation, which we do in our office, but the analysis, and you have drones that can record sites. It was hard to get into busy intersections previously, to get scans done. But now with drones, you can just hover over and I love all that stuff. That's not really the future, it's actually now. But what I see the future being the most complicated, I think, the thing I'm most aware of and the most concerned about is AI with deep fakes and audio, because it's really easy to fake audio now. And so people call us, is this fake or not? I don't know. Like literally, like the audio can be faked so easily, and video will be faked easily too. Like right now, we don't see it yet, not fully. You can say hair's out of place, the shadows or eyes are not moving right, or
Yeah.
they're not breathing right. So all that stuff with video is going to be cleaned up. There's going to be fake video easily created on your desktop. So I'm concerned about all that stuff. I'm concerned that we keep our arms around it, that we be aware and be honest about it. Like saying, I don't know if it's fake or not is okay. Like, I know it might make you lose professional level, whatever. I think it's better to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So this stuff's going to come out. It's going to be disruptive. The bottom line with all that is going to be chain of evidence. It's going to be, where did it come from? Who had it first? Who's testifying about where it came from? If we can trust those people, whatever, they can help prove it through the technology that they got it from this point and it came like this, then we'll be better off. That's what's going to happen in the end. It's the same thing as with documents. Today, how do you know someone signed a paper? Well, you see a paper with a signature on it, that could be faked. A book can be faked. A document can be faked. So it's the same thing. It's chain of evidence. It's going to be with audio and video as with documents. And I think we have to keep our eyes on that stuff.
Okay. I promise, last one. This is Andre. And Andre, I'm doing it for you because I know Andre. So he's asking about books, like signal processing books or forensic audio workbooks.
Oh, no.
He's got to go grab your reference library.
No, I'm trying to think if I don't have it. My office is in disarray as it needs to be, I guess, for me. What audio books would I recommend? Signal processing. Honestly, I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I don't.
No problem.
Sorry about that. I have to say, I don't know.
No problem. You know what? And that's okay. That's an okay answer. But you know what I will do, Andre? I'm going to speak to David offline. And if he's got a couple of recommendations, I'll get back to you for sure. So David, I think we're going to leave it here. One thing I'm going to show is if it's okay, I can show your LinkedIn profile because it's public. Yeah. Okay. So folks, some of you wanted to get in touch with David. So he is on LinkedIn. There he is. Feel free to make a connection request. Also, let me bring up his website. So of course there's a contact form or something there that you can always reach out to him. Yeah. And so
I'm happy to talk to people. I love it. I love learning. I love teaching about this stuff. Who knows? Maybe you can help me with something too.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. So look, David, hey, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we got to finally, talk a lot about tech and stuff like that. It's great talking to you. It's great. I can see you're very passionate about what you're doing. And I'm very grateful that you were able to be here.
Jim, thank you very much. I mean, I enjoyed talking with you. I enjoyed talking about it. I enjoyed hearing the questions. And you're right. I just enjoy teaching and working with audio and video friends.
Excellent. Well, do me a favor, hang back. I'm just going to make a few closing comments and then I'll come back and I'll chat with you for a bit. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Cheers. All right, folks, that's it. We did it. Very interesting talk. A lot of great stuff going on there with David and audio. A lot more to it than meets the eye. And it's really interesting to see what these new technologies are going to be doing for us. Artificial intelligence keeps coming up in discussion after discussion. So I don't know, maybe time to circle back and do a very dedicated talk on artificial intelligence. Anyway, I talked about some of the programs and things like that going on. You can always go to the website and find that out. I am planning to have another Forensics Talks next week. So if you are around, Thursday afternoons at 2 p.m. So everyone, thank you for your input. Some great comments and that sort of thing. So please, have a wonderful Thursday and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.